make it by 10:30 if I have to, but we really shouldn't have to spend.
Well, I don't think this is going to be a long episode. I'm rolling.
Okay, that's my point. Rolling.
1, 2.
3, 4.
All right.
Did you enjoy not having to do the count last time?
Yeah.
This is episode 9. Correct?
Yes.
And it was called
Lesser Evils.
Lesser Evils. Okay.
And I do have a recap, so.
Yeah, I'm not gonna let you say it.
No. It's. Let me say it.
You have to make this plea on air.
I'm no. Just let me do my goddamn bit, okay? Can I just do my bit?
No.
Every week it's a different bit. Just let me do the bit.
Oh my god. Hello and welcome to the Life in the Kraken podcast, Fillory edition. Your dose. Oh god, you just fucking. This is all your fault. What Oh crap, where should it be from? Like the cage?
The wellspring,
We do the wellspring?
No. The dueling field.
Dueling. That's what it's called, the dueling. I didn't know there's a name for it.
There's a name for it. I'm just describing it. You could do the
answer is the dueling field, but then we need the name of it.
There's no name for it. You could do the offices of the senator. You could do.
You sure there wasn't a dueling field name?
No, there's no name for it. They sang on their way there. There's nobody who was like, now on our way to dueling field number 4. They didn't. Nobody said it.
I guess dueling field's fine. It's most appropriate.
You could say from a Florian dueling field if you want.
Florian dueling field. I think it would be like in the middle. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't even. That's true. I don't even know if it was Florian.
Okay. Dueling field. We're just going. Okay.
Just from D from within a dueling field?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Deep from on the dueling field, or deep into the dueling field? Deep
or just on the dueling ground.
Yeah, just on the dueling ground. Dueling field. Hello and welcome to the Life in the Kraken podcast, Fillory edition. Your dose of the magicians from within.
Your dose of the magicians from on the dueling ground.
Go fuck yourself. Oh, I got it. Hello and welcome to the Life in the Kraken podcast, Fillory edition. Your dose of the magicians from the middle of the dueling fields. I'm your host, David Robertson, editor-in-chief of We've Always Lived in the Kraken blog. And alongside me, I have joining me from the Austin office, Josh Kayusewicz, managing editor of the same blog.
Look, I do think it's an issue that the senator is the son of a evil, psychotic cannibal god, but her emails.
Okay, that's the one semi thing you get for this episode. You've been warned. No more. So we are returning once again to talk about this past week's episode of The Magicians from season 2. This is episode 9, Lesser Evils. And though I loathe to say it, Caillou insists he has a recap, and I suppose I should let him say it.
Yeah, so here's what's happened this episode. A bunch of fucking bullshit. And a bunch of problems got solved for no good reason, and shit was really stupid. Back to you, David.
Do you feel better for wasting time saying that?
No, nothing can assuage my rage.
Okay, sure. So Caillou's still in a state that can only probably get worse, but I guess we'll try our best to have a discussion about this episode, even though it sounds like it may just be me saying things and Caillou shaking his fists like an angry old man at the whippersnappers across the way.
And another thing.
And okay. But I'll just say that I didn't have as many issues as you did with the episode, though at the same time, they did kind of fuck up Quentin. So, I don't know.
Where to start?
Yeah. No, where to start's easy. They did a musical number in this episode. I have absolutely no fucks about the fact that it had really nothing to do with anything because I don't care. When in doubt, put music in things. It works every time.
I was watching that and I was so mad because I was like, this is like objectively enjoyable, and yet like as the actually hang on, sorry, I have to research this joke real quick. I'm sorry.
It's fine. You're about to be cut off. Any criticism about the musical is not allowed in this podcast.
Okay. As the ghost of Tom Hanks eventually said to Matt Damon, "You didn't earn this." That's how I felt about that musical. Just like this, there's just so much more that could have been done in the show to position this to be a better moment than it was. And it was still a good moment. It was funny. It was the show actually being like joyful about magic for once, which was really nice. And it was a good song to pick, and it had thematic relevance. And Elliot was got some confidence singing it, and that was all well and good. It just like the show has just like not taken me to the place where I can fully enjoy that kind of thing.
But the end of the joke, the King of Laurie, I was so confused.
I like he was confused. Here, one thing that was weird for me was that like I thought like going into the duel would have been much better if he had been dueling the prince, because the prince was like, haha, I was Javert, and like, oh, and you set up like a compelling rivalry here between two like people who were enemies on the stage and now would be enemies on the dueling field, and then it was like not happening.
Yeah, but I mean that wouldn't make any sense because he's not king. So
I know I'm saying like this, the story was not positioned such that would work. But like, I don't know, the king could have said like the king could have been the other way around. The king could have gone to Earth and not the sun. I don't know. I'm just saying like there's a missed opportunity somewhere in there.
Well, considering I will say the part I probably did enjoy most was most of the Elliot stuff. We'll continue on there because that's about the only part I have lesser issues with than most other stuff.
I will complain about one part of this Elliot thing and then get out of the way of it, because I did actually enjoy it. It was like it's like the longest, most like clear and simple and like they did the stuff you needed to care about it. Storylines the show has had in quite a while, and so I enjoyed it on that level. However, when Elliot had an unarmed man at sword point, you did not need magic to tell you how to stab him in the chest. You did not need... Normal people with a sword can kill a man without needing a magic spell.
My actual counter to that is that he is not a trained warrior, and his strike would have been clumsy, and the dude could have dodged it. Like, you're just... Like, that's... I mean, I'm not saying he shouldn't have tried. Like, I would have had him try and then fail, but he would have failed, just so we're clear. It doesn't matter.
But he could have tried, and he also could have taken the dude's sword when he ran away. Like there are other things he could have done other than just.
The sword was too far away for him to do that. He would have gotten grabbed by the dude and thrown to the ground. You're underestimating how a highly trained warrior against a non-highly trained warrior acts, mainly because you have no idea how to fight in any way, shape, or form. So, but I will agree with you that he should have tried. Like, I would have tried, and then more than likely, because even with a highly trained person, if Elliot had tried, the dude wouldn't have been able to do enough to the dude wouldn't have been able to do enough more than likely to actually put Elliot in a disadvantage. He would have dodged, and then Elliot would have run. But he should have tried. I agree on that. But there are factors that go into that in a person who that dude who's supposed to be the King of Laurie is supposed to be one of the greatest warriors in the realm. I'm just going to tell you this right now, a clumsy person like Elliot trying to stab him, he would have dodged that blade, and there's actually a chance he would have broke Elliot's arm and then just beat the crap out of him. These are all things that easily could have happened. So I would have liked him maybe to have tried to, or at least pretended like he was going to try to, so he got on alert and then run away. But fair enough. But in general, I felt most of that duel worked. The Les Mis song was great. I thought it fit really well. Like you said, I agree. It was one of the few times the show decided to be like, we have magic, let's have fun, which is part of the reason I liked a lot of the robbery episode. When it was not trying to do real stuff and just concentrating on being like the robbery episode.
Yeah, I mean, this was an instance where like it's okay that magic was the solution to the problem here because, first of all, they really made it about like Elliot's wife caring about him as being the source of that magic, and then second of all, like he's in a duel, he's in a duel in a magical world, and so like magic being the solution to that is only fair, really.
Plus, it also fits the thing that the show has at least constantly acknowledged, like when Quentin was trying to learn how to shoot a bow, and Penny was just like, "There's a spell for that. What are you doing?" And taught him how to shoot a bow correctly. Like it's one of those ones where it's like, sure, like magic can even out like these some of these highly trained skills. Like and so it was nice to see them actually using it in that way. I just enjoy in general also like. The conversation between him and the king was kind of funny when Elliot's in the tree. The king's like cutting down the tree with his giant sword.
Yeah, that was a good scene. I wish that got on a little longer. In fact.
Yeah, I could have used more of that because most of the rest of the episode was garbage. So I could have definitely used more of the one part of the episode that wasn't garbage.
I mean, I am heartened that we're going to get more of that character because I think that character has a really good like perspective that can help Elliot and will be interesting to hear from.
Yes, and I like learning the fact that you get to have one husband and one wife in Fillory.
Did the guy say in that conversation that he had both? Because I thought he said the same thing, that like he was sad that his wife prevented him from getting a husband.
I think he was saying it in the way of like the way I thought he said it was something about he was saying that in death his wife prevented his husband. He made it clear that he could have had both.
Oh, you know what? Maybe he was saying that his wife had like told him, "No, I don't want you to get a husband," but now she is his late wife.
Yes,
and that's what he was talking about.
I think that's what I'm saying. Like, he acknowledged you could have both, but his wife is like the wife S's mother, who is the person, which makes sense though, because S's mother's from Earth, and so she would not be cool with like these whole. More than likely, being from Earth means you're probably not cool with the whole polyamorous lifestyle / bigamy thing. So. It makes sense that she would be like, no.
Yeah, it's a little weird that the people of Fillory and Loria and like the magical people are both like mired in a terrible patriarchal system and more open about sexuality than we are.
Yeah, I mean that is really interesting. I like the Loria one too because the king was also interesting just in that like the way it was also an interesting moment because. Obviously, him acknowledging that his wife said no to have him having a husband and he respected her wishes was interesting. And it almost suggests that strangely, as terrible as Loria sounds like they are, it in some ways is less patriarchal than Fillory. The Fillorian, or not Fillory, but like the Fillorian side, which I find kind of interesting since, obviously S described things about, I mean, from what I've gotten of Loria, it sounds like they're like a very savage place where everyone's like sexually liberated and can do what they want. In fact, if we're gonna be really honest, other than how S actually talked about like him sleeping with women and talked about Margot, it's entirely possible they actually really aren't. They actually are much like clearer. It's just that we haven't seen their society, and S is just a dick.
Yeah. So here's let me like zoom out and talk about the episode as a whole, like thematically, because I think there's parallel lines here between the problem of the two countries sharing the wellspring, and the senator and the conversation he has with Katie, but I think that it's all in a way that like the show fails to draw together or conclude anything from. In that, like all these situations are ones of kind of power imbalances and privilege. Like the scene where Katie is talking to the senator, where she's like, you've had it good your entire life. Your parents left you a pile of money. You've never failed at anything. The implication there is like, he is, the handsome white male politician who's never failed. And because life is like, the circumstances of his birth are such that life is like, spread itself beneath his feet for him to do whatever he wants. And then I got similar feelings from the other way around, from when the the Lorian King was talking about how, like, his people are, so used to deprivation that they practically enjoy it at this point. The fact that the king was black and his son is black and everything was not lost on me. I feel like there's like a theme there that the show is just like not doing anything with.
Yeah, it did seem like it was another wasted opportunity. Though, I mean, we'll get to the senator next, and I can talk a little more about. There was other parts of the conversation I enjoyed, namely just I liked him complaining about the farming bill. It took him forever to get passed, and she's like, "But it passed, right?"
Yeah.
Then him suddenly realizing every bill he had sponsored had passed, which is not something that should ever happen and ever.
I was kind of annoyed at the way that like the news was like, senator passes bill, and I'm like, that's not how that works. Well, it takes a lot of senators to pass a bill, in fact.
Well, though I am kind of like, oh man, if only could have realized this sooner. If he was truly a good person, he could just be like, he could basically just, control every policy he wants for all the time. I'm kind of just like, wait, why wasn't the senator the dude then that, like, if I was magicians and I'm from clearly coming from a perspective of like, the more liberal perspective the show's coming from, why wouldn't you have it where I'd make it, this is the world where this guy got a bill passed that was, like he got all these progressive bills passed, because that's clearly the side he's supposed to be from. Like, he's not supposed to be from like, a populist, not like the populist side of like just pretending like he's helping things. He's supposed to, at least as of now, legitimately be trying to help people.
Well, it's an interesting corollary to the privilege discussion that like he's like, well, it doesn't feel like I've automatically succeeded because my life still feels hard. And it still, he's like, it still felt hard to pass this bill. It still took a long time, and it to him it feels like a real achievement, even though from everyone else's perspective he's like bizarrely, fortunate.
Well, yeah, it was also like a good version of also the kind of like shading that goes into the privilege discussion, which is like, he's like, my life has also been hard, and like my parents died, I have dealt with like tragedy in my life, which, is a lot of the arguments that people will bring up when they're trying to argue against privilege. And then it's kind of like, that's true, but that's like a secondary thing to what we're actually talking about.
Yeah.
And so like, you are correct. Like it was one of those interesting ones where they put it in there. It's just, it kind of came out of nowhere. And, it also doesn't help that we just really haven't gotten enough of Loria in general. Like, all we know about Loria is like what S or the King have told us.
Yeah, hopefully we'll learn more. There'll be some visiting. Like, I don't know, Elliot will go visit their palace or whatever. Like,
yeah, I mean that may help. But I will say I did enjoy. I enjoyed the look on, like, when I did enjoy when Elliot shows up and he's like, it turns out you can have both, and his wife like looks away sheepishly like, damn it. I was hoping he wouldn't realize that.
I didn't see that. That's funny.
Well, yeah, but she just kind of had a look on her. It was like the look on her. I expected her to just be like devastated, and it was like this weird combination of like, she was kind of like, ah, fuck, but like it did seem like a look on her face of like more like crap. I was hoping he wouldn't realize that, because in her case, partially like, in her case, partially because she knows that like she does actually kind of love him, and she knows that even if he says he loves her, she's still not. I mean, regardless if he's actually bi, he's clearly in favor of men than women. So she knows that like the only thing she had going before was a couple of things, and of course, and so like it kind of, and then I mainly say because then like when they actually stood together, like, we're gonna be one big happy polyamorous family, she like actually smiled somewhat legitly and not just like I mean, we'll see how that goes going forward, but at least for now, that seemed kind of interesting. Though I will say it was weird when he was talking to Margot. I was like, we're going to build a spy on them. And I'm like, but you don't need to spy on, I mean, sure, that's not, do you understand how it,
there's a lot of weirdness going on here. Like, so like one thing is that like, one thing that bothered me about the beginning of the storyline, like not the duel itself, which was fun, but the fact that, that it was immediately assumed that like Elliot would do it, and not Margot. And I was kind of like, it just seemed weird. It seemed weird the way that everyone seemed to like assume without knowing so that like the duel would involve swords and sword magic and not necessarily any other kind of magic. Which is maybe just part of my frustration with the show, like having reduced their magic down so far that like every time the show presents a situation that like magic could fix in a dozen different ways, they're like, but that's hard and spells take long to learn. It's like, are you magicians or not? Uh, like the fact that like you can have basically an incantation makes me and given that magic is apparently so difficult in this universe, I don't know why like more spells are not done that way, because you wouldn't have to fuck with your hands that much if you could just like read a short statement and suddenly have spells working for you.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the Margot thing didn't bother me because, I mean, it didn't bother me until I understood. That was clearly because nothing. Why would Margot get to fight in this? Every other version of this world has made it clear the High King is what matters. So, of course, like, Margot wouldn't be able to do it. Like, he could say it, but of course, it would get assumed he was going to do it. That, to me, that's like.
But again, this is like every time you just like go along without even talking about it, you're not commenting on patriarchy, you're just embodying it.
Well, that's fair. I'm just saying in this one, I could understand them. Well, could I have used a comment, or even if it's just Margot being like, I'm glad I don't have to do this, because she probably wouldn't want to. Sure. But like that was not the part of this that was like. Now I am annoyed, like you said, about they didn't get enough. Like it seemed like they were trying to suggest that the duels just involved swords and stuff because that's just how it was. But I could have used definitely a more in-depth conversation about, a depth conversation about what was going to go into the duels, why they had to be this way, at least, I could have used a callback where Elliot's like, man, I wish I knew how to use battle magic like Katie, really well. Someone could have,
because they say like duel, and then he's like, is there a rule against magic? And that made me think like, oh, it's going to be a magician's duel where he's going to use magic to kill this guy, and instead it's like, no, it's a sword duel, and I'll use magic to be a better sword person. It's like,
I mean, right. I mean, like I said, they have at least set up enough to explain why he couldn't just use battle magic, but then they needed to actually like address those things. So for example, if let's say he was like, all right, should I use battle magic? I'm like, well, we can, and then someone could bring up, well, you can use the emotion zapper thing, but use battle magic again. He could be like, hell no, I'm never using that again, And then like when he gets the sword, that's eventually just his compromise. They could have done that. If you're going to make it where, like you said, you're not just using magic to solve it, they could have at least gone through the steps explaining how they get to the point where it's finally her giving him the sword as opposed to sword. And then she gives it to him. And the moment still mostly works, but you are right in that there was a lot of fun that could have been for a segment that was still a lot of fun. It could have been more fun. And or at the very least, they could have explained to me why it had to be this way, and I did feel like that was a real missed opportunity. Now, I guess, still, like I said, I enjoyed this part of the storyline. It still at least fit. No, at least Elliot didn't. While like the other parts broke, at least the Elliot part of it stayed consistent. So they've yet to actually break that really yet, which is good. Like you said, that's why this storyline still works. Like they didn't fuck it up, even if like parts of it. The through line is still good, even if like the parts surrounding the through line are broken.
Yeah, like the only thing like the like I said, the only thing that's bothered me with the beginning and the end. I also didn't like when Elliot came back and was like, there's like fun Elliot when Elliot is like pretending to be arrogant and a dick, and then there's like moments when he sort of drifts into that, like when he came back and was just like, all hail me, I'm fucking awesome, and also I decided all this stuff without even talking to you, and I agreed to marry somebody without talking to my wife. It's all good. It's just like,
Hold on. I mean, yeah, the scene was interesting, and that I did kind of also like the fact that when the other king showed up and they were like, what the hell? I'm like, we're kings, we can do what we want. I'm like, actually, that's fair. I wish you would have that discussion more. But you're right, it was another missed opportunity to have at least a brief patriarchal discussion, with everything. But it's like they interesting always figure out a way to like they like hand wave things away, but then do something that does just enough to make it kind of work. Still, it's like an impressive but annoying skill.
I mean, I don't agree. I feel like moments like these really bother me because I feel like I feel like they don't care about it. That's the thing. I think they think it's funny, but I feel like they don't actually care about what's going on in terms of the patriarchal way that they present the society. Because like, I think a show that was more that like legitimately thought this was a bad thing would consider having its characters say like, I think this is a bad thing. Why don't we change this? And instead they just again and again are just like, well, it's great when it's fun, and then the rest of the time we'll just kind of ignore it. It's fine.
Well, especially considering at the beginning of the season, it seemed like they were going to address things like that.
Right.
Because they went with class. I mean, I guess what I'm saying more is I agree that they seem to fuck up like the bigger picture stuff, but they.
No, I think to what you just said, like, way back at the beginning of the season, we talked about how, when they did that, crowning ceremony, that was them being like, we're new in town and we get to decide what these rituals mean. And more, it seems like over the course of the season, they've mostly just like kind of bowed to the pressure to conform to what's already existing there without even really trying to fight against it.
Yeah, well, I'll answer that in a second, but just to, since I guess what I mean more is just that, they F up like the patriarchal discussion, but they figure out certain ways, I guess. They continue to figure out ways to make like the beats and relevancy of certain points still work. Like, even though I was annoyed about some of them, I still found that like him actually bringing up like them being polyamorous and how the king said the king, kings decide thing also still fit in a way. And so it's like weirdly they seem to be able to figure out ways to make things still work like logically or somewhat like in a minorly, emotionally satisfying way, while also, as you say, missing points completely. And that's kind of an interesting skill to have, but it definitely seems to be hurting them at times, because then it's like most people, if they were like, we need to figure out this problem, and then if they couldn't do the smaller version, then they'd have to do the bigger one. But now they seem to be content with only ever doing the smaller ones. So it's like a weird skill they seem to have, where it's why like half the time I think their plot lines do basically work, but we're mostly, even when they're doing well, we're always like, this is good, it should have been better. Because of like, it just seems like they're content to kind of, I guess, like dwell on like, they're content to just kind of do like sometimes the bare minimum to get points across without, like you said, like actually addressing.
Like the towards the end of the episode with Katie locking Julia up, and like that the thing that Katie says to her about how like you're inhuman, you're monstrous, you don't have emotions anymore, and then like at the very end she's like, it's not your fault, but we're still gonna lock you in this box and figure out how to like fix you, and it's like maybe that's like the bare minimum they need to do, but to me that's not good enough. It doesn't really do justice to Julia, because like none of this is Julia's fault, and that's not. It just feels like lip service to say that and then not change your actions as a result of that.
Well, we'll get, since you keep trying to skip ahead to other storylines.
I'm trying to unify my discussion of the episode, because the problems that I have with this episode are problems endemic to the episode and endemic to the show. So I'm trying to structure things. And once again, this is our like classic dynamic where I'm like, the whole episode means this, and you're like, I noticed a plot hole, and that's just two different modes.
Well, I'm also doing it because I'm like, I just feel you skip ahead too soon, and we're structuring it wrong.
I'm jumping around.
Right. This is why you can't structure things when you're right. This is what happens.
I'm not including that in this episode. Shut the fuck up.
I'm sorry. You have bad structure skills. It's not my fault.
Well, I disagree, and this isn't the time for you to sit here and insult me. So.
Oh my God! You've got to be kidding me. You were fucking so sensitive about stuff. Ridiculous. Anytime I actually insult you, you're like, we can't put that in the podcast. You do some ridiculous shit and include it in there, and then I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Fucking child. Anyhow. Well, I don't... Okay, hold on. Let me just refresh, because I can't insult you ever because you get too sensitive about it. So, hold on.
What? Why would you need to insult me?
We're doing the banter. This happens.
Why is that? No, that's not... No, you... All right, we're not going to have this conversation. I'm not mad. Let's just. What do you want? What do you want to talk about next? How do you want to structure this? You're the host, and you get to structure these episodes.
Oh my God! Now you're just being a dick.
No, I'm serious. I'm absolutely serious.
No, I'm trying to think of how to go, because you basically are like, well, we can't count this. So since half our divergent went off point, means you're going to cut a significant shit of stuff out. So I'm trying to rethink.
I'm literally cut that tiny bit. So when you're like you structured this badly, like that's the. I'm literally just going to cut out the next sentence where you say something about my writing and I got upset. So.
Oh my God, child, you're fucking such a child. Okay. Anyhow, getting back, I guess what I was going to address when you were complaining about like how they've dropped the earlier through line at the beginning of the season with them questioning stuff. There is one way they can save that. I don't have any faith that honestly they'll do it, which is I have wondered if maybe when eventually they all have to come back together, presumably at this point, the end of the season will be, I would assume, Quentin trying to be king of this damn place. And possibly, maybe not with Julia, who the hell knows, someone else there. I do wonder if it's possible if they're trying to set up this idea that they made this big deal at the beginning of the season of being like, we're going to change things, and then they've let things kind of take control of them, and if that's going to be a good show, which this could kind of be, but there's not enough evidence, could have actually been using this to set up like them falling into this trap and then like them realizing it and that be a new guiding force going forward. I doubt that's going to happen, but I do feel like it is somewhat possible because it just seems so weird that you would actually go out of your way to address things like this beginning of the season and then just drop them.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that's a way that they could fix this, but I also think the show is like proven consistently that it really doesn't use that structure of like character does a thing until another character criticizes them, making them realize that they shouldn't have been doing that thing. They just doesn't use that often.
The only reason I think it could happen is because in a lot of ways it could work somewhat similar to how, hold on, let me just let the plane go over.
Okay.
I will say I should have done my part where when you're like, I want to stretch these thematically, and my response should have been like, this is the fucking Magicians. It doesn't deserve a thematic discussion. Because that's kind of my thinking when I do this. Okay. Look, beginning of the season, it deserved it. So we had thematic discussions. It lost that right.
Well, I like pointing out how their themes are like not quite hitting the mark, and then at this point, it's more about my themes of like how my criticism applies across the board. Because,
no, I know, I can tell. That's why I'm just like, no, it's not that I don't want to talk about the themes. That I don't think the show deserves to have their themes discussed. They clearly don't care, so why should I care?
Exactly.
The only reason I actually think it's possible this might happen is because of like the temporal loop they did last season, which the temporal loop kind of addressed some of the weirdness of some of the season, which at least showed some idea of them thinking ahead towards certain stuff. And I'm not saying that means it's going to happen, but it is one of the only reasons I'm wondering if it might, because it just does feel really weird. They've just so like thoroughly dropped it and and I just have to wonder if part of it is because, Margot and Elliot are having to do it on their own. They've lost one of the other queens. Quentin, is basically off in his own show at this point, and he happens to just kind of show up to everyone else's show every once in a while.
I love the fact that he just like he's so far off in his own show that like at the end of the episode he was like in a random like junkyard.
Yes.
Like far away from everybody else to do this. It's just like, come on, Quinn.
What's actually worse is that, quite frankly, part of my issues we'll have when we discuss Quentin is that he became part of the real show, and I was like, no, Quentin, you were in a better show. Like he got dragged into the real show, and it fucked his entire story up.
Literally dragged.
Yeah. So. But we'll
hold on. One more thing before we move on. I want to talk about with Elliot, which is like my kind of joking complaint during my recap. Like, do you feel weird about like having set up like one of the show's like actual best conflicts because it's straightforward and they've invested time in it, and it's meaningful to the character of like Elliot having to sacrifice to stay the king and stay married to this woman that he's. Even though he would rather have, have a husband too. Do you think it's weird for the show to just like turn around and be like, actually, this was fine. You don't need to suffer anymore. It's good. This plotline is over. Like, do you feel like that's weird, or is that okay with you?
It depends how they handle it. If the whole point is what they actually want to analyze is the idea of a polyamorous relationship, which is something that's not done in television, then it's fine. If it's what you said and it's just some bullshit hand wave, especially combined with which we're about to go on to the Margot storyline's about to happen, then I'm gonna be really, really annoyed because it's pointless. It like defeated the whole purpose of it. It also like will have undone all the work the show did to establish him as being bi. So yes, I'll be annoyed. My assumption is based on his comic. This is actually going to be a commentary on like a polyamorous relationship and what that means.
Yeah.
More than the other part of it.
I hope so.
But I actually have done enough with the sexuality in this season to make me think they actually will do this somewhat correctly.
Mhm.
Like they've mostly done this correctly. It took them a little too long to like actually say the words that proved he was bi.
Yeah.
But like his actions always kind of suggested that. But you know, like that was the. I mean, I'm missing. That's like the one complaint I would have had. So we'll see. It's one. I know I hate having to do once again. They'll have to see it, but this is legitimately one where it's like it just if they handle it correctly, it's fine. If they go in a different direction, if they handle it in the way you just described it, then yeah, it's terrible. But since I've only had one scene to work with from it, I can't like judge. I'm not going to prejudge them for something they haven't done yet. I can already yell at them enough for things they have done. It's not fair for me to start yelling at things they could be doing. And speaking of which, let's go on now to briefly discuss what happens with Margot in this episode.
Yes, they set up some terrible plot line for Margot to experience later. If you want to reserve judgment on that one too, I'm okay with that.
I'm not reserving judgment. That plot line's terrible. Fuck this plot line. I hate every version of it. I always hate plot lines that do this. I hate plot lines that involve people not telling people what's going on. I got really excited when it looked like she was actually going to ask Elliot's wife's permission for this. And then, of course, they didn't.
Which part of that bothers you more? Should she have not asked at all? Should she have asked? What do you think she should have done in the situation?
Asked. She should have gone, look, she should have just said frankly, like, I can save Elliot. This is the consequence. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
And then she could have made a decision. And then it could have been a secret they both had from Elliot. That conflict I'm okay with. I'm not okay with what's going to be the all-out conflict, which is clearly going to end up. Clearly, at this point, the worst version of this is what this conflict makes. You know, his wife turn on him. She rejoins the Foo Fighters. She tries to kill them. Like all these stupid things that could have happened now from this. It's like there's.
I think at this point the worst version of this is that like we get 8 episodes of hand wringing and then Rumpelstiltskin and they just like defeat a fairy in like riddle combat and nothing happens.
I mean that's also terrible, but. I guess my bigger problem is it's another example how shows always a lot of shows when babies are involved tend to find ways to make babies not be involved, and they always annoy me. And this just seems like another example of the show just deciding they didn't want to have to deal with a baby.
Yeah.
And add in unnecessary complications. But I mean, there's some funny parts to this thing, mainly involving the sloth. Only in that I loved Margot being like, look, sloth, you're the only one who doesn't suck. So
That scene was great because all sloth scenes are great, but the part that bothered me is that like if you're a smart person, the only sentence that can possibly follow "Don't keep information for me in the future" is "What else haven't you told me?"
Right. That bothers me too. But I'm just gonna quickly say the sloth was funny. But yeah, her talking to the fairies was really annoying too. I mean, the only reason that this could be saved is if this storyline is actually used as a way for Margot to have something to do. And if they actually wanted to use this as Margot doing something on her own to stop this from happening, then this storyline works. But instead, this is going to be used as a thing of Margot having screwed up or Margot needing to be saved. But if this was like Margot caused a problem and now she fixes it and maybe she eventually tells them, but like she tells them in this way and all this stuff, even if like next episode, I'm hoping she just tells them what happened. And then there's like hand wringing. And then it's like, now she's like, now we're going to work on fixing this, as opposed to will probably happen where she just won't tell people or something.
Here's what bothers me about this storyline construction is that like, you know, we both love the way the Elliot storyline is like Elliot is forced by circumstance to choose to mature. And we show what that means and how difficult it is and you know, how he deals with that. This is an instance where like, instead of sacrificing anything, Margot has to sacrifice someone else, which is something that she always does. That's who she is. She's someone who is out for herself generally, with, you know, with the exception of a few people that she really cares about. And so like her, you know, we don't have enough relationship built up between her and Elliot's wife for that to feel like she's betraying someone that she truly cares about, other than like, you know, it's Elliot's baby. It just feels like this is not a moment of growth for her. It's just her like getting worse. And I'm not sure that this plotline is going to like do anything to really change her character or be meaningful for her arc.
Well, like I said, it would require the show, it'd be about her fixing it and then her having to make a sacrifice to fix it. Yeah. I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, I will say, I assume the show basically was after that scene they had the week before where she's like, everything in my life will be done to make sure you're protected and your baby's protected. and then the next episode she immediately has to do something to sacrifice the baby in favor of Elliot. That was probably their thinking.
Yeah.
Of like how that was betrayal, but the same. I mean, we'll see. At the same time, she was like, she did. I'll give them credit. She said enough to where like she was like, "You'll do whatever I say, no matter what it is." Blah blah. I mean, it's terrible, but she at least did enough to where like if the wife tries to literally act like she had no idea something like this could happen, I'm gonna be a little annoyed. I'm like, no, she didn't lie to you that badly, but it's still. It's just a frustrating storyline. I hate every version of the storyline in every show in existence. I find to be stupid.
And it was one more instance for me of like the patriarchal rules of the world resulting in like it's the women and the babies that have to bear the brunt of all these problems.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it also annoyed me that they like arbitrarily had, instead of this being like Margot figuring out a way to negotiate something, it was like she's like, you insulted him, that's the deal. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I just whatever. I'm like, no, this, like I said, the slot. Basically, I only wanted to bring this up to talk about the sloth. The rest of the storyline,
we all love the slot. That's not news.
The rest of the storyline is shit. It's the worst type of storyline in fantasy. It annoys me on all levels. There are ways they can save it. I absolutely don't trust them to do it. And to be fair to them, this is not me not trusting them specifically. It's that I don't trust any show to do the correct version of the storyline because every show who's done it has always let me down. So there's almost no show that's strangely, you know what? The only show I could think of that has actually like addressed what it means to have a baby in a terrible situation, not hand waved it away, is The Walking Dead. Just the saddest statement I've ever said in my life. They haven't just, The Walking Dead can't magically get rid of that baby. They haven't just murdered it for no reason. They've just dealt with the consequence of having a baby in zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
So you know what? Touche, Walking Dead. I guess that's the one compliment I'm ever going to give you. Right. So moving out of this Fillorian shit, because whatever.
Yeah.
Now, this is why I wanted to start with Elliot. Quickly go to Margot before I got too angry and then move on.
Fuck Fillory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't have much better stuff to go to. I don't know. We'll do Quentin last because it's such a profound destruction of things. And also,
the funny, like Fillory, like some parts of Fillory are fun in this episode, but there's no better moment in this episode than the dean being like, when somebody's like, "Is that a senator?" and the dean is like, "Probably, because why the fuck not?" And the dean just like threw up his hands and was like, "I guess I'm not the dean of this school anymore. This show is ridiculous. Fuck everything."
That was an amazing line, and is why I need the dean to have more lines in this show, because his like annoyance, his like acceptance that he's like responsible for these kids, but like, or well, these young adults, but like he's clearly annoyed the hell out of it, is just amazing.
Yeah.
So we'll go to the Julia storyline because there's not why not? It will eventually loop back into the Quentin storyline, so sure. I mean, I guess the show probably thought they were being clever by like going in further, be like, look how much Julia and Alice are like each other with slight differences, and I'm like, no, but that makes it worse. Like, I mean, like you said, they did reinforce this week, like you talked about, which is that Julia's like at least connected action base wise to people. So like if she feels she needs to do something, she'll do it, and so she won't let morals get in the way of getting those things done, but she does have very issue focused things, whereas Alice is just like, whatever I gotta do.
Yeah, like when Julia was very practical when she was in the senator's office. She's just like, look, this is gonna be really difficult. Let's just kill him and put the energy in here. Like, why the fuck not? He's just a skin sack.
I like how they were just both like, no, we're not killing a U.S. senator.
But Julia's also like, like we said last week, like, when Katie is just like, all right, that's enough, stop it. Julia was like, yeah, all right, fine, and she just wandered off.
Yeah, like it's like clearly like it does seem like at some level they're using Julia's amoralness to be based on like laziness. It's like whatever requires least most effort is she's like, eh.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I mean that part was, I did enjoy also them kind of like be like, well, we're gonna kill the dude, and he just like throws them all backwards. I also enjoyed the hilarity. There was a good like the Penny and Katie in this episode constantly commenting upon like the privilege of the senator, but also like them just being like, this dude is evil as fuck and he has no idea. And it's like, like all these things. They're just like, Penny's like, this dude is like the greatest hustler I've ever seen in my life, and like them constantly making comments like that kind of reinforce what you said of the episode's trying to do this weird privilege takedown, and like. But like not doing, which was funny, but didn't always entirely work well. I did also enjoy when the random, the surrogate for the physical kids, found them, and he was like taking comments, and they were all just like, "You need to leave now, go away."
That was funny. Yeah.
So that led to some great moments. I mean, the Dean moment was obviously by far that was my favorite part of the entire episode. Was the Dean making that comment? Just that may be my favorite part of like one of my favorite parts of the show. So just like, in general.
I also enjoyed the douche wolf who's just like, look, I caught werewolfism when I was having sex, and I'm not gonna let you shame me for it.
Yeah, that was. And he's just like pissing in the cage. Yeah. But I mean, Julia went crazy, I guess, because we're forced to look. The worst thing Julia did in this episode is she forced poor Quentin to be a part of the main story, and it ruined everything for Quentin's character arc. Because we'll bring this in. Quentin had he's in a cage. They all now know what's going on, and they set up like this.
Angel season 3. That's the one where he's caged up and jealous.
Well, that's part of. Well, he does some Angelus stuff, I think. He's caged up in both 3 and 4.
Okay.
4 is when he becomes Angelus, so they can go back in time, and so they can remember this storyline of when he met the Beast, and then it turns out it's just he met him, and there was really no purpose for it whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm thinking of 4 then. Yes, 4 was the.
And then they didn't, and then the better version of that was supposed to be that was supposed to the point of like they thought they were doing something useful and it was actually useless, but now Angelus is here. But then they didn't actually follow through properly with that, other than having Faith come back and beat the shit out of him and bring him back. But which was kind of cool. But look, if you want to get me angry, let's talk about Angel season 4. That's how you can get me angry. If you want to talk about things fucking up everything, every way, shape, or form, basically like the last 10 episodes of 3 through almost all of 4 is just rage.
Tune in on Life of the Kraken Sunnydale edition.
Well, we Los Angeles since it was set in.
I know. Well, obviously we'd have to go through all of Buffy first. So.
Not even close. I like Buffy, but I'm not watching season 4 ever again. I don't even want to watch season 1 ever again. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, no, I would never. No, it's awful.
We just like do 2 and 3 and pretend the rest of the show didn't happen. Anyhow, poor Quentin gets dragged into this. So they set up the thing, which is Quentin. You have your 3 choices are as follows. You have to, basically let Alice go, which he's like, no. Like, Alice, 3 choices. Like, Alice, you have to let me go. He's like, no, you'll kill people. And like, okay, you have to steal her away. And he's like, no, I can't live in a world without Alice. And like, okay, then you're going to die. And so there's your thing. And then what I was like, and then it was cool because that was a decision we talked about him getting to last week. And I was looking forward to him having to like actually like deal with what that means. And like, at some point probably threaten to kill himself. He's like, you know what? Then I don't save the world and I don't live it. Like in a very selfish decision him. And they could have used this as a really great way of him ultimately letting Alice go and all these things and whatever that means.
Well, he basically chose death. Like he was letting himself die in the cage. When Julia tried to force the issue by throwing him at Reynard, he wouldn't do it either. He basically was not willing to choose anything else.
This is my problem, right? So they don't have him properly actually go through that. Instead, he's like, I don't want to do this. I'm just going to stall, effectively. Then Julia forces him in, and he kind of refuses. But they also bring up the fact that Alice is like, you waited too long. I can't do it anyhow.
Well, I mean, he's Hamleting kind of literally because of the death part. But he's also, I mean, I think Quentin is smart enough to understand that, like, he should not be waiting for a like Deus Ex Machina to make this decision for him. He's just kind of like, I think he understands stalling his death.
Right, but my point is right. I needed to have the conversation you need to have, which was that like, I think because it seemed like he would, like you said, he seemed to be choosing death.
Yeah. Except
he didn't say that. And this is the episode in which you express that, and he has to go through it and what that means, and then like. Even if like, and then you could use, but instead he got forced into situations where instead of him getting actually, basically in the past couple episodes, Quentin's been on his own show basically. Yeah. So he's had time to go through these like emotions. In this episode, because he was forced to be in the real show, he never got time to go through any of this. So instead it's all like even more so than normal. He's basically been forced to go through the same narrative hoops and tricks and skips that everyone else was forced to go through. Yeah,
this whole episode was like another like way too fast magicians episode, but right. Like and you're right. This is the same thing that we talked about last week, where like he didn't he didn't like follow through on their discussion of like, well, you'll kill us both, and he needed to be like, well, that's what I feel like doing. And it was the same thing in the scene where he's in the cage talking to Alice, and she's like, well, then we're both gonna die. Good work. And then it cuts before he can be like, well, that's kind of my solution here.
Right. Like I needed Quentin to say it because it seemed like that was his solution. Like it seemed like, or if nothing else, it seemed like Quentin was basically going, I refuse to make a decision, and by me not doing that, I'll just die. And this episode should have been used for everyone else to convince him that that's the worst decision he can make. Like,
right. I mean, like my problem. So that, like, you know, you're right about this, but this actually wasn't what bothered me about this episode. Quentin wise, it was the next step, which is that having essentially chosen this, having essentially chosen death, he then at the end of the episode lets her go, and I have no idea what happened in between. I have no idea why he made that choice at the end.
Oh, I don't think he actually chose death. That's my other problem. I think he was just refusing to do stuff, and I think ultimately, I think the point of the arc of this episode was like if the arc of this episode, if let's say Quentin had been able to be in his own show, like he's been to the post part, or maybe he pulled in, or more likely, like really this decision should have happened in the next episode. If we're gonna be honest, would have been that. You know, Quentin's like, I have to choose death, and he stalls, and then he reveals some things, and he sees Julia, and she talks to him, and they could basically use this discussion of like him growing up, and use since this has been a metaphor for stuff, him, you know, just like Elliot being forced to kind of like grow up by being a ruler. Quentin's metaphor is supposed to have been how he deals with letting go of this, like his first love, basically.
Right.
And the episode should have been spinning this. He should have declared he wanted to be dead. Without him ever declaring it, I think the show actually was going with, it's just he didn't know what to do. And ultimately, you know, they could have also played with the idea that he was going to let himself die. When the Renard thing happened, they could have also played with this fact that, you know, Alice could have said like, well, let me out right now or we're both dead. And Quentin could have finally said, well, then I want to die.
Or he could have gone the other way, which is that afterwards, after they were stuck, he could have said to her, you know, please go free, and she's like, it's too late.
Well, no. Right. My point is, regardless, that's the transition point. You use that point of he either says it, but then when he says it and he's about to die, maybe he then realizes, I thought I wanted this, but I didn't. And then you have the scene where he lets her go.
Yeah, because he's like, the problem is really like this is one of the most well-established character motivations on the entire show. Is Quentin loves Alice and does not want to let go of her no matter what. And you know, when a character like 180s on their motivation, you need to explain why, and the show just didn't.
Right. It just that's what I'm saying. It just stopped. I know the arc that was clearly happening, which is supposed to be Quentin finally realized Quentin finally realized that for better or worse, he couldn't seal her away, because that part to him was basically the idea of sealing her away is worse than anything else. Or and by extension, that means him dying and her dying is the worst thing. And that's why he let her go. That to me was supposed to be the point clearly he was at. But you're right. There's nothing in the step, like they skipped too many steps to get to that point.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously why he let her go. He obviously let her go because in his mind it was worse. Because he said, you know, his whole thing about saying why he wouldn't seal her away was, I can't live in a world without Alice. So the only way he could do that was by letting her go, because it was the only actual way that could happen. But he doesn't like.
Well, here's the problem: is that the problem with Quentin is the way that he frames that. He says, "I can't live in a world without Alice," which is still all about him. It's not about what's best for Alice. And so, like, if there had been a way for him to transition from what's best for me to I recognize what's best for you is to be free, then that would have worked. But they didn't do that either.
Well, but then again, I will say this: the other problem they have with this is, you can say that, but Quentin brings up a good point in being like, he's terrified about the fact that if he lets Alice go, she's just going to go murder people. Like, he has nothing but her word. So they could have. It was
clearly like from a pragmatic standpoint, the only like reasonable decision was for him to put her away. Like, you know, we joked about it, but he's off in that carport because he's hoping that she's not going to go murder all his friends if he's like a little ways away from them.
Yes,
when, like,
that was clearly why.
And she flew off into space and could have gone and murdered them all anyway.
Well, right, but I assume his thinking was that if she tries to kill him, she'll just kill him and not everyone else. Because if he did it around everyone else and she tried to kill him, they would try to stop her and then she'd kill them all. You were right, but
it's just he releases this dangerous creature out in the world, and you know, he doesn't really.
Right. So like it just kind of annoys me that like Quentin had actually going through the proper steps they've been of proper character arcing, and then they basically, like you said, the problems that have existed with other parts of the show they gave to him this episode, and it was exceptionally frustrating. And I don't know the shift. You're right. Him recognizing that this was best for Alice was also a good thing. Though, like I said, they also, though, to make that happen, should have had a moment where like Alice proves, even in her amoral nature, that legitimately she's not going to just murder everybody, because she's like, it doesn't. She has to do like a good thing, but something to like make Quentin actually like have another, like, to help that transition, like we're saying.
Right. Well, here's another thing that they were missing along those lines is that like, the end of last episode was the thing on the previously on with her, going to the Irish priest and saying, I want you to teach me to be free and remain free. But we never understood what she wanted to do with that freedom, and that was kind of the open question of this whole plot line. Does she want to murder everybody? What does she want to do? And we're missing a scene where like Quentin is like, if I let you free, what would happen? And she like convinces him convincingly, like, look, what I want is to be free, and with that freedom I will explore the magic that I can see in every direction. As she tells Julia, I will, I've always wanted to see space and all this stuff, and like that would have given that ending real like meaning and poignancy to it as a send off for Alice and for Quentin, as he's like, I set you free to go do the things that I know you want to do.
Especially they use this idea of saying like, she says to Quentin, you're the one who helped me realize I shouldn't be afraid of my own power, and now I want like to personally connect it. Yeah. And they could have done all this like comeback. Yeah, I mean, all that would have worked, but instead they just like skipped ahead, and it was just frustrating. I mean, kind of like how it was frustrating that like it looked like at points they were going to actually differentiate between Alice and Julia, and then they didn't. So it's like, like you have that scene where like Julia talks to Alice in Quentin's body.
Yeah.
And Alice is like, all right, now do this to Quentin and rip him out. And Julia's like, I don't think Quentin would like that. And it's like, actually, it seemed to suggest once again one of those like weird things where like both Julia in terms of her relationship with Katie and Quentin is a little different than with everyone else.
Yeah.
And then of course she grabs him and yanks him out and like does, I mean, there's not even a great moment of like when Katie does that moment where she seals her way and she's like, you got lucky. We both know Quentin could have died. And there wasn't even a proper, like, I was like, wait, is like like it seemed like there was partially supposed to be something where Julia as baby is supposed to be showing a face to react as if like that actually bothers her. It's just unclear. It never properly worked. It was really annoying. And I agree with you that I think they could have handled that final scene a lot better. I mean, the other problem I think it had was that it had Katie do that little speech where she said, I've been making excuses for you. And I'm like, I think that should have happened a little bit longer. And then it would have helped build up better to when she does this to Quentin. And then because the whole point is supposed to be that I assumed in Katie's mind, Julie would never do anything to actually hurt like the really close people, which is basically her and Quentin. And then once it's clear that she will, that's a problem. I mean, like you said, though, then they could have, and then by realizing that better, it could have actually helped make that scene where she's caged away better. Like Katie could be like crying. She could be like, I'm really sorry about this, but like, like at this point you're too dangerous to let be free or something or whatever.
Right.
And then it could have helped make that scene. They could have given more, like that speech she gave needed like another minute.
Yeah.
That's what I think. You said you don't think it was enough. I think it just needed like another minute of her more emotionally expressing how sorry she is about this and being like, you saved my life. Because then Katie, like, you saved my life. I'm going to now save you and bring back the version of you I know you want to be. Because and then she could bring up the fact, like, I know you didn't want to lose your shade because you would have lost it already. And they could have actually used the fact that it got taken from her better. Like to be like, because with Alice, for example, if not better or worse, one of the big difference should be between the two of them is for better or worse, Alice did choose to become an infant.
Yeah.
Like you can say she chose it for like, but she chose to do it for what, for reasons. Julia did not choose to lose her shade. Like that was a big part of her arc was like she had opportunities to lose it. She kept saying no. She was definitely taking this line of like, my pain gives me strength type thing.
Yeah. I mean, this like, it comes back to my feeling about how the world and the plot have just like brutally, literally fucked over Julia in so many ways. And how that's just like not really acknowledged and how that bothers me about the show. No,
I mean, it definitely bothers me too. It's definitely like as much as they've done with Julia, they don't seem to properly address things at time. And as I said, part of it is also like, I just don't think they give her enough screen time with the people who need even if it's just the small things, like it continues to annoy me that her and Quentin don't have enough screen time together.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why the one pairing of the show besides her and Katie that would allow her to be with someone who's like actually trying to help her and not yelling at her all the time or trying to screw her over. You know,
Well, I mean,
after the initial bumps of their relationship from season 1, which were for other reasons, like, it always annoys me that they just don't like do that.
Well, look, now that Quentin's gotten rid of Alice, his plotline is concluded. I'm sure the show won't come up with some like bullshit make work plotline for him to be involved in. I'm sure he has tons of time now to talk to Julia and go be a king in Fillory and get into that shit, and like, you know, he's just gonna, you know, go back to basics, really.
I mean, I'll say this because I have something proof for next week. It does appear that his storyline, at least next one, is directly dealing with Julia. That's all I'm going to say. So hopefully, consider, like I said, in general, Quentin's still fine this season, and even this episode, it wasn't a complete failure. Like some of the beats, it's just that it was frustrating that they brought him into the real plot line.
I felt like the abdication of explaining that choice, and maybe they can fix that if they explain the next episode.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
There's nothing wrong with that. But as of now, it feels like a total failure to conclude his arc in a meaningful way, which invalidates, in my opinion, the whole arc. It means there was no arc. It's another one of those, like, we know where we're going, we know where he is now, we're not going to bother to get there.
Well, I assume his arc's not over yet. If this is the end of his arc, then I'll change everything. I just assume it.
Regardless of what happens next week, he went from someone who could not give up Alice to someone who gave up Alice without ever becoming someone who could give up Alice in the meantime.
Well, like I said, that's true, and like it could be. I guess the point is they've done enough good work with Quentin that this can't totally, like, this itself can't totally ruin it. If the rest of the episode, like, for example, even if like the next 4 episodes fix Julia, it can't actually fix a lot of the terrible shit they've already done to her.
Wait,
like,
are there 10 or 13 this season?
I think there's actually 12. I think.
How many more do we have to go through?
13. You have 3 or 4 left.
Oh god.
My point is that even if, let's say, the next 4 episodes did a great job fixing Julia, like everything we've had, they address all the issues, like everything. I would still be like, the complaints we had legitimately about Julia and Mercy still apply. Our character's still kind of not well as well. Or in the case of, let's say, someone they fix Penny, it doesn't change the fact they spent 8 episodes on his damn hands.
Yeah.
Differently, if let's say they did this episode with Quentin and the next episodes continue doing Quentin's correct path, this can't ruin his entire arc for the season if they do things correctly, potentially. Now, if the next episode doesn't do it, if the next stuff doesn't properly go well from there or discuss, you said it can, but unlike the rest of the characters, he's had enough character work where he can survive a little bit of random bullshit, just like Elliot can survive it, while the other ones can't.
Speaking of Penny, I guess we were wrong to get so mad last time because, he doesn't have to go off and be a librarian. It doesn't change anything.
Oh, I just wasn't going to talk about Penny. He doesn't deserve to be spoken about in this episode. I mean, honestly, look, just like the senator was like, whatever. He had powers. Then it was really stupid. Renard took him and it was done. It felt like a complete waste of Christopher Gorham.
The senator's entire storyline in this episode was like, just like totally fucking useless.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, when Renard actually got him at the end of the episode, I was like, and anything you could have done with this is ruined. I thought like maybe the senator was going to like push back his father. I thought that was the point of that storyline, was him. Instead, whatever. It was pointless.
No, he's going to join Reynard as like the big bad for the next 4 episodes because, if Buffy has taught us anything, it's always a good idea to switch villains midstream.
No, he's not going to become the real villain. He's going to become Darth Vader. He'll turn back. He'll rejoin them in the last, the last episode.
They didn't even fucking like shoot that Senate office thing correctly because like that's such an X-Men 2 moment where like someone who thinks he's powerful is confronted by people who are actually powerful, and they shot it all from like high up so that they didn't seem like they had power. It was a bunch of fucking bullshit. Katie does that thing where she like leaps forward and like does some magic to throw papers off her desk, and it like ruined the whole thing because it looks so much more effortful than everything else they were doing. It was just, fuck this show.
And now that we're discussing actual logistics of how things look, that's a good time to end this discussion for this episode. Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. We have to go now. I don't have a bit. Like, fuck the show right now.
Just say that's it for this edition of the podcast.
Oh, sorry. Let me do a funnier version of that.
Okay.
So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. That's it for this edition of the podcast. We have to go now because we just don't want to talk about the show anymore. Like, we're done.
Yeah, we literally have to go now.
Yeah, we're just done. So bye.
All right.
There you go.
Make sure you transfer that in.
Yeah, let me export that right now. Yeah, like